Hello, and welcome to another Fantasy Premier League video. My name is Steve, and the week after I wildcarded, I've been struck with a flag on Raya and no backup goalkeeper as I opted to go for a 4.0 million non-playing keeper. And Joao Pedro is probably out this weekend, and I currently have no 8th attacker in my squad. I also had a pre-planned transfer to move from Diogo Jota all the way up to Saka this week. And Diogo Jota did catch me with a very surprise complete rest in game week 5, which obviously didn't help the rank in the week that I did wildcard. So we'll discuss whether I should still follow through with the move to go from Diogo Jota all the way up to Saka, or whether I should use the 2 free transfers and the 2.6 million that I have in the bank to deal with the injuries in my squad. And then at the end of the video, we'll take a quick look through Captaincy for game week 6, and we'll take a look at the top 10k template, as I'm sure that will be invaluable information for all of you out there who happen to be wildcarding in game week 6. And of course, for all of you who aren't wildcarding, it is always good to check in on what the top teams roughly look like. So remember to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, especially if you get any value out of the following content. Right, so before we go into the Raya injury, what you will see on screen is that the website has had a little bit of a reshuffle. Now, it still is very much under construction. It is still very basic, but it has got a lot of the information that could be quite useful to you out there, and so that is why I'm opting to use it for these videos. But on to Raya. So Raya was spotted limping through the mixed zone at the Etihad Stadium with a bandage across his thigh after the Man City fixture last weekend. And then he did end up missing out on the Bolton match midweek, which happened to afford Jack Porter, as the youngest ever goalkeeper at just 16 years old, getting his first start for Arsenal against Bolton in midweek. And of course, this has raised speculation as to whether Raya is truly injured or not. And this is largely due to the fact that Arteta typically keeps his cards pretty close to his chest, which is something I would probably do myself if I was in his shoes, because I would not be wanting to give away any tactical advantages to the opponents that I may be coming up with in the weekend. So unfortunately, we're not going to get any more information, or we're probably not going to get any more information about what the state of play is with Raya. So we can only go with what we know right now. Now, what I know is I didn't see Raya in any distress in the City fixture. Yes, he did spend a lot of time on the ground and did look to be playing up a couple of things here, there, and everywhere in order to burn down the clock. And although it does seem like a little bit of convenient timing to start limping after the match, there is a small chance that the injury, that if he has sustained an injury that he did pick up in the match, this is all speculation of course, these injuries can sometimes take, an hour or so to kick in when you finally start warming down from the game and actually realize how much pain you're actually in. And so Raya could also obviously be injured this weekend. But speculation aside, the comments from Arteta sounds like he doesn't know if Raya will make it this weekend or not, which immediately makes me think that it doesn't sound like a very serious injury, meaning that he probably does have a very good shot at actually making the fixture this weekend. Now, if Arteta did come out in the press conference and said, yep, Raya is out and he is out this weekend, but it is only precautionary and he'll probably be next week, I would probably just hold on to Raya and end up playing with 10 men, as I do think Raya is worth waiting for, and I also have a little bit of value tied up in him already. So as you can see on screen, his current sale price for me is 5.5 million. I haven't got any profit in him yet, but my buyback cost is plus 0.1 million, and that is because Raya's price is currently 0.6 million. So yes, I would stand to lose 0.1 if I wanted to sell him and then bring him back in, because I'm almost certainly going to want him back in the squad, as Raya for me is just a set and forget keeper for a very long run of games. So I'm actually just going to roll the dice on this one. The fingers crossed he does make it out for the Leicester fixture this weekend. And if he does end up missing this match, hopefully it doesn't turn out to be too serious, but we will have a little bit more information heading into game week 7, which I will or should have 2 free transfers in order to deal with him should I need to. Right, so on to the actually injured Joao Pedro. Now I'm going to say he's pretty much injured because Hertzler has pretty much said everything but the fact that he is completely ruled out. So Joao Pedro was spotted on crutches after the match against Nottingham Forest last week, after that Gibbs White challenge where he clattered into Pedro's ankle. Now, Joao Pedro was already coming back from a bit of a knock that he picked up in the international break. However, I did not see that knock as being too serious, thinking that Joao Pedro probably still had a good shot at starting last week, and if not, I was pretty sure he was going to come in off the bench for the last 20 minutes or so. And with the penalties and the type of player he is, I was more than happy to do that in order to hold him for the foreseeable future. And of course, in that final 20 minutes, he goes and picks up what looks like a bit of a more serious injury. The talk about poor timing for my team, having just wildcarded and held him in my team through that. To make matters worse, Joao Pedro has also recently posted an Instagram photo of him playing PlayStation with those same crutches in the background. And with Hertzler's comment, which he said, we have to go week for week for him, but I don't think he will be an option for the weekend. I'm not sure how long he will be out. I think Joao Pedro is a good healer. I'm convinced he will be back soon, but of course, also with this player, we cannot take any risks. So that is basically confirming that Joao Pedro will be out this weekend, and he might even be set for a couple of game weeks on the sidelines. Now, this injury is pretty annoying, considering I did already have that pre-planned move to go from Diogo Jota all the way up to Saka. And if I did follow through with that move, that would actually only leave me 0.1 million in the bank, meaning that I could only find a replacement for Joao Pedro up front up to and including £5.6 million. So, Diogo Jota to Saka. Should I still follow through with this move, or should I pivot and upgrade Joao Pedro instead? Now, yesterday it looked like Saka's price was going to go up when the price changes were scheduled to go through, which is about 1 p.m., 2 p.m. New Zealand time. And even though I knew the price changes wouldn't be too accurate in game week 6, given the probable number of wildcards out there, meaning that they would have been skewing the numbers somewhat, I still felt like I needed to make the decision yesterday, as I'm pretty sure we won't get any more information about what's going on with Joao Pedro. And if I had have just waited a day or two, I might have had to buy Saka for 10.1 million instead of 10.0 million. So I did in fact make the decision yesterday, and I'll just quickly run you through how I broke that decision down. So Saka's next 3 fixtures, and we could just use Gabriel's fixture thing up here on the screen, are sublime. They have Leicester at home this weekend. That's then followed by Southampton at home in game week 7, and then Bournemouth away in game week 8. And all 3 of these opponents are prime targets for attackers, not to mention one of the best attacking teams in the league. And Saka is known to, well, he does very well against the promoted sides, or typically has done so in the past. So I need to weigh up whether I stick with bringing in Saka or pivoting away to someone cheaper in order to upgrade the injured Joao Pedro. And so we'll just start by looking at the alternatives to Saka. Now, of course, the first obvious team to be looking at would be to remain in Arsenal, as they all have the same 3 fixtures. But given that Trossard is currently serving a suspension this week for getting himself sent off last weekend, Havertz is currently listed as a forward. It's really only Martinelli that is going to be the viable option in the Arsenal camp. And so far this season, he's already had appearances of only 64 minutes, a 16-minute appearance, and a 79-minute appearance already in the season. And so I don't know how assured Martinelli's minutes are. They may be more assured in game week 6, given the suspension to Trossard and the fact that Odegaard is still out. But this is all very much speculation, so we just have to assume that he's probably looking to line up with a similar amount of minutes as to what he was already going to get. Now, the only other option in the Arsenal camp is potentially Jorginho, who is probably the most likely man to come in for Trossard this weekend. But Jorginho is only going to be a super short-term move and is not at all what I am looking for in my squad and the way that I did structure it on the wildcard. Now, I am almost certain that there will be some sort of non-Arsenal midfielder who is probably going to do really well in the next 3 game weeks. And out of the players that I do not own, the most likely player that might be able to keep pace with Saka is probably someone like Luis Diaz from Liverpool. But I do think that Gakpo is going to steal too many minutes off Diaz, especially in the next couple of game weeks, given Slot's comments leading up until this point. And so I'm not at all thrilled about a potentially a risky rotation player like Luis Diaz, who has to keep up with someone like Saka across the next 3 fixtures. I also have to keep in mind that there are so many wildcards floating around in game week 6, and Saka is almost certainly going to be a lock on every single wildcard this week. And so it is actually going to be a very hefty ownership level that I would be going up against if I was going to try and find someone to replace my pre-planned move. Now, I think in these next 3 fixtures, Saka could actually score anywhere between 30 and 40 points, which is an average of 10 points per game across the next 3, given the opponents and the fact that 2 of them are at home against promoted sides. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if he came away with a 20-pointer this week alone, some sort of brace and assist or something like that, especially given they're probably going to have to rely on him quite a lot, given that Odegaard and Trossard are both out. So it's really, I don't have a lot of replacement options in midfield that I feel comfortable that can keep up with Saka. And so if we have a really quick look at the potential upgrade options for Joao Pedro, my probable replacements would be someone like maybe Danny Welbeck, but I think he is probably going to be rotating sometime soon. Welbeck's minutes. Well, Welbeck is the type of player that has been quite injured in the past, and so he does often need to rotate. Excuse me. Maybe Chris Wood would be he would be a decent enough shout, I suppose. I could also look at a punt on someone like Duran, who just keeps scoring off the bench. It just looks like he's got his nose, he knows where the goal is right at this point in time. Or if I'm not going for those options, it looks like I would have to go all the way up to someone like Solanke or maybe even Jackson at Chelsea. Now, the way that I structured my wildcard last week was to have most of the money in midfield, as I do plan to jump on and off some midfielders in the coming game weeks. So I don't really want to upgrade my 5.5 million forward all the way up to someone like Solanke or Jackson. And the other options, let's say the best option's probably Chris Wood. And if I tie him in with someone like a Luis Diaz, I'm not sure the pair of them could even keep up with Saka across the next 3 game weeks. And so yesterday, I decided that I just cannot ignore the Leicester, Southampton, and Bournemouth fixtures for Saka. And so I did, in fact, bring Saka in for Diogo Jota yesterday, picking him up for their 10 million price point, leaving me 0.1 million in the bank. Now, what this does mean is that I will almost certainly be playing Greaves off the bench, because my only other downgrade option of Joao Pedro is to go down to someone like Raul Jimenez at 5.4 million, who does have Nottingham Forest at, can't remember if they're home or away this week, but they play Nottingham Forest. But Nottingham Forest's defence actually won me over when I watched them play that Liverpool fixture a couple of weeks ago, and so I don't think it's actually a great fixture for Fulham, and then they run straight into Man City. And so Greaves is back in the squad. He did actually get fielded for me last week as Diogo Jota got a surprise 90-minute rest. But I will be crossing my fingers that they do not concede twice in this fixture, and I can come away with a 2-pointer. Maybe a very, 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 very lucky clean sheet if they do manage to snipe a clean sheet at home to Aston Villa this week. Right, so on to captaincy. I do actually have 3 options in my team for captaincy this week, and that would be Haaland, Salah, and Saka. Now, I'm not actually going to draw this out too much, as my captaincy choice is actually pretty obvious. Haaland is a monster. He is bang in form, and given I have actually been following Newcastle relatively closely in the opening stages of the season, I am less than impressed with their defensive, or the defense that they have been putting up. And so I can easily see a Haaland haul this weekend. Now, Salah also has a great fixture away to Wolves. Wolves have been shipping chances and goals over the first 5 game weeks. But Salah actually hasn't been shooting too confidently in the last 2 game weeks. And so if I did bang the captaincy on him, it would be more in a hope that he came back into form with this really nice fixture, which would see me going against someone who's already very in form, who already is up against a defense that I don't really rate. And the only other option is Saka at home to Leicester, but having just discussed the fact that Odegaard is out and Trossard is currently suspended, the front line is going to be a bit of a makeshift front line at Arsenal, and although I don't think that's going to change the outcome of the game too much, potentially it does detract a little bit from the chances that Saka may pick up in this fixture. Or maybe it just makes Saka the sole focus as he is the main man in the team. Very hard to tell, but I don't see enough of an upside there to punt. I don't suppose it's really a punt, but to go against Haaland this weekend. And so Haaland will be my captain for game week 6. Right, so the top 10k template. So here, down the side here, I've got some rank tiers. And the reason that I've created some rank tiers is because the overall rank system, especially at the start of the game, for about the first third to about even the first half of the season, is actually a pretty useless metric to track exactly how you are going, because 1 point is about 100 odd thousand places, and so difference of 1 million in rank. It's probably only around about 10 points or so. And so if I've created some rank tiers over here, and what we've got on screen is the unreal ownership, or the top 10k ownership figures, or the rough top 10k ownership figures for the top 2 goalkeepers, the top 5 defenders, top 5 midfielders, and the top 3 forwards, ordered into a valid FPL formation with the most owned players on the pitch. Now, what you can see from this template is probably not a lot of surprises. If you are currently top 10k in the world, you have to have some players in your team that have been scoring very well in the opening 5 game weeks. However, what this does show is that there isn't a set template. It is very much a mixed template at the moment. The current team value of this template is £110.7 million, which is unaffordable. So what that means is the most owned player you can see here is Haaland, 98.6% owned. So everyone in the top 10k basically owns Haaland. And then alongside Haaland, they have another premium, which is either Salah at 56.4% ownership or Palmer at 33.6% ownership, with Ollie Watkins sneaking in on the bench as another semi-premium option at 29.3%. That basically means that the template will be split up between Haaland and Salah teams, Haaland and Palmer teams, potentially Haaland, Palmer and Watkin teams, or potentially even a Haaland, Salah and Palmer team with some very budget options around the place. In defense, there's also probably not many surprises, with Raya and Gabriel as two of the two top Arsenal players that have been scoring very well. Diaz is the most owned in the top 10k midfield at 70% ownership. Also not a surprise considering how many goals he's been scoring. He is currently second for the Golden Boot race and is the second best marksman in the league so far based on goals scored versus his XG. So not really a surprise there. Trent Alexander-Arnold is also there. He's also not really a surprise considering he is the second top scoring defender right now. The common enablers in the squad are Smith Rowe at 5.8 million, Rodgers at 5.2 million, and the injured Joao Pedro at 5.6 million. Probably not a lot of surprises here, given Smith Rowe has been scoring quite a few points. Rodgers came away with a 10-point haul last weekend, and Joao Pedro has managed to pick up some points early on. In fact, did have him for that solo goal that he scored against Arsenal, when Arsenal again went down to 10 men. And then on the bench is probably where the surprises start to come in, sort of. I mean, Sanchez is there, but that's because he got a penalty save last week or the week before, coming away with a 15-pointer. Robinson, the man that I didn't go with when I tried to fix my Kwanzaa dilemma in game week 2, has been picking up some very jammy assists across the first couple of game weeks. He's in there because obviously he's been scoring quite well. But what really did catch me by surprise was Mazraoui coming in as the 5th most popular defender in the top 10k, which is quite surprising given United's early season form hasn't been great. But then again, the team form does not always necessarily translate into points for the players in FPL. So those are the template players, which you can see by the shield icon next to their name. And if we just quickly switch over to the ninja icon, this is the next set of players in the top 10k that weren't in the top 2 goalkeepers, top 5 defenders, top 5 midfielders, and top 3 forwards. So it's the next set of each of those positions. Turner's just going to be a dud, 4.0 million on the bench. Fabianski as well, also dud 4.0 million on the bench. So the top two keepers really are Sanchez and Raya in the top 10k. But it is in this popular differentials team where you can really see the players who are coming into the template and also leaving the template as the top 10k make their transfers. So we see Konza in there, who still has quite a few nice fixtures. Scored a really jammy goal. God, I didn't even realize Konza was available as a right back option. Somehow he gets all the way up front and ends up scoring a goal in a game which they concede. Not ideal. Saliba with 114,000 sales ahead of Leicester, Southampton, and Bournemouth. He is definitely one that is currently leaving the template. Bays, who is in my team on the bench, is just there, and so is Harwood Bellis, who I did have in my team before I wildcarded. Then across the midfield, you can see Saka starting to creep into the top 10k, as he has now had 320,000 transfers in this week. Winks is probably one of the dead spots in the 3-4-3 setup, with Winks being the fifth midfielder. Eze probably on his way out of the top 10k template with 256,000 sales. He's down at 17% ownership. Welbeck with a small rise of 5k. Chris Wood, 187,000 purchases this week. So not as many managers as worried about his potential minutes moving forward, with 187,000 purchases in. And then Nicholas Jackson with 539,000 transfers in after his great performance last weekend. And then rounding off the rest of the bench is Mbumo, starting to make his way into the top 10k with 642,000 transfers in. Barco leaving by 136,000 managers. That's probably all wildcards right there. And then, of course, Diogo Jota with the heavy sales after his complete ghost last weekend, which was not at all what I wanted to see, having held him through the wild card. As you can tell, I'm still a little bit salty about that. And all right, well, that wraps up this video. So don't forget to like and subscribe and leave us a comment to tell us what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.